Thursday, 27th of April, 2017. Just after 11 a.m., she pulled into the service station without a hint of panic. The car was hired, clean, and nothing looked out of the ordinary. She stepped out, stretched her arms, maybe glanced at her phone. No sirens, no flashing lights. But the net was already closing in. Plainclothed officers were watching, quiet, deliberate, ready. Meanwhile, in the middle of a Cheshire town center, another woman sent a single-word message. No names, no questions, just one word. Active. Two separate moments, miles apart. Different women, different cars. But behind the scenes, the same silent trade. Class A drugs, moving in weight, leaving behind the same trail of wreckage. This is the story of Jade Hughes and Rian Ferguson. Two women, two lives, both swallowed by a world that thrives in the shadows until it doesn't. Jade Hughes was 33. She lived in Guyacre Court, a low-rise block just on the edge of Ellesmere Port Town Centre. To neighbors, she was just Jade, a hairdresser, a mum to a teenage boy, someone who mostly kept herself to herself. She'd had a few hard years, that much was known. A suspended sentence hung over her. Cannabis possession and drug driving. Nothing major before that, but enough to land her on the radar, quietly. By the end of 2022, her name had crept onto police systems. Not flagged, not targeted, but logged. A presence. Officers suspected she had ties to local supply. They just didn't have anything concrete. That changed in September 2023. Phones across Ellesmere Port began lighting up. Short, sharp bursts of messages from numbers known only to those who used them. Flare messages. We'll go into detail on those later. But users knew exactly what they meant. 3 rotating numbers. One would fall silent, the next would take over. It wasn't random. There was a rhythm behind it, and a name. Jade wasn't doing this alone. Her partner, Jonathan Hughes, 32, worked as a removal man. They shared a surname but weren't married. He moved the gear, she worked the line. There were no street corner spotters, no dodgy internet cafes or mass texts. This came from home, from a hallway with a school bag slung against the wall and drug gear hidden in the drawers. Police later described her role as operational and managerial. She wasn't just aware of what was going on, she was calling the shots. Still, she kept up appearances, kept her clients for hair appointments, still turned up for the school run. But in between, her Graft phone would light up. No conversations, no emojis, just one word, active. And every time it came through, dozens of users were already waiting on the reply. Rian Ferguson was just 25, living in Helmshore, a quiet, tidy corner of East Lancashire. Online, she looked like any other young woman enjoying life. Smiling selfies, nights out, designer handbags, and full glam. Her socials were a stream of filtered smiles, cocktails in hand, captions about living for the weekend. She called herself just a normal girl, one who loved the high life. But behind those pictures, something darker was building. In February 2017, Lancashire police received an anonymous tip-off. Someone claimed Rian wasn't just partying, she was moving cocaine, not in scraps or street-level handoffs, in bulk, quietly, efficiently, a courier working higher up the chain. Officers began surveillance. No headlines, no noise, just quiet eyes on her movements across the northwest. Patterns began to emerge. Runs to Merseyside, brief stops in Liverpool, then back alone. Often in hire cars. No intercepted calls, no clear deals. But something wasn't sitting right. Then came Thursday, the 27th of April, 2017. Undercover officers watched as Rian pulled into Walton, a calm residential patch in Liverpool. She parked up and waited. Within minutes, a man approached her window and handed over a courier-style bag. No words, no cash, just a silent exchange. She gave a nod and drove off. That man was Christopher Harrison, 41, from Moss Lane in Orrell Park. Already flagged by organized crime units, Harrison wasn't a street-level dealer. He supplied those further down the chain, in this case, Rian. Police later described the exchange as clinical and controlled, a high-tier handover with zero attempt at disguise. She left Liverpool heading north. No panic, no tailspin. She stuck to the middle lane, like she'd done it all before. But this time, she had company. Officers were trailing her from a distance. That brief moment in Walton had confirmed everything. Rian Ferguson wasn't a user. She wasn't some runner taking petty risks. She was a trusted courier, shifting kilos of Class A across county lines. And what she carried that day would cost her years. But for now, she was still at the wheel. And just behind her, in the boot, sat 3 kilos of uncut cocaine. The Hughes operation didn't run on corner boys or back alley drops. It was quieter than that, more controlled. It all centered around a single mobile phone, one that barely rang, never stored contacts, and didn't make calls. They called it a Graft phone, stripped back to basics, loaded with a pay-as-you-go SIM, used for one thing only: selling Class A drugs. Every morning, like clockwork between 7 and 9 a.m., a message would ping out to dozens of users across Ellesmere Port. Flare messages, short, coded, and instantly understood by those who needed them. Phrases like straight tens, powerman downshift, and early riser might have looked like nonsense to most. But on the street, they meant crack and heroin were available. No questions asked. This wasn't some clumsy text blast from an internet cafe. It was strategic. The Hughes phone wasn't just on, it was broadcasting, and it was ready to deal. Between September and December 2023, police monitored the operation closely. They tracked every flare number. First came one. It ran for weeks before going quiet. Then another popped up. Same message pattern, same morning window, same style. That too went dark. Then a third emerged just as calculated, covering the same ground. It was never random. Every message had a rhythm. We'll break down the full string of recovered texts later in this documentary. But what stood out to investigators was the level of discipline. This wasn't some makeshift operation stitched together by chance. It was structured, timed, and reliable. The supply line may have been small in scale, but in terms of consistency, it ran like a machine. People came and went, addicts disappeared, but the phone, it never stopped. As we've already seen, Rian Ferguson had collected 3 kilos of cocaine from Christopher Harrison on a quiet residential street in Walton, Liverpool. No fuss, no words, just a swift handover. Then she was gone. She wasn't driving her own car. It was a hire, booked in a clean name, insured with nothing to flag it. That alone gave her cover. No ownership, no paper trail linking back to her address in Helmshore. But what Rian didn't know was that unmarked police units were on her from the moment she pulled away. Her route north was steady, textbook even. M62, then on to the M6 middle lane all the way. No swerving, no speed. If you'd passed her on the motorway, you wouldn't have looked twice. She looked like any other driver. Then came the turnoff. Just after 11 a.m., she pulled into Charnock Richard Services, parked near the back, killed the engine, rolled her shoulders like it was any other break on a long journey. There was no sign she knew what was coming. And then, in a blink, plainclothes officers closed in. Inside the boot, officers found 3 kilos of tightly packed uncut cocaine. No smaller bags, no wrappers, no scales or burner phones, just wholesale product. Straight from Liverpool, en route to East Lancashire. Estimated street value, £343,000. It was clean, it was organized, and it wasn't for street-level dealing. This was pure transit. Rian wasn't running a local line. She wasn't doing pickups for pocket cash. She was trusted, handed bulk weight, and police believed this wasn't her first run, but it would be her last. She said nothing at the scene. No panic, no excuses, no attempt to run. The role was clear. The drugs were seized, and one of Lancashire's most tightly watched in-transit busts was now officially shut down. As we've already covered, Jade Hughes wasn't running just one burner phone. Over the course of 3 months, she operated 3 separate flare phones, each one pushing heroin and crack into the same network. By December 2023, police weren't just watching, they were ready. It was the morning of Tuesday, the 5th of December. Officers from the Ellesmere Port Proactive team tracked both Jade and her partner, Jonathan Hughes, to the town center. No shouting, no chase, just a quiet arrest, made calmly on the pavement. Both of them had active mobiles on them, and what those phones revealed told the story better than any witness ever could. At the same time, police raided their homes with search warrants in hand. At Jade's address, they found the essentials of a functioning supply operation: 2 sets of digital scales, torn plastic and snap bags, disposable glove fingers, an EE SIM card wrapper, and a stash of heroin and cocaine. Prepped and ready for sale, nothing excessive, but everything necessary. Jonathan's place was no different. Police recovered packaging tools, cutting agents, Class A residue, and most crucially, a SIM card wrapper that matched a flare number used just days before the arrest. This wasn't a stash house. It wasn't deep storage. This was a working line, live and moving. Product came in, got processed, and went straight back out, either through runners or direct pickups. Quick turnover, high frequency. But the real damage came from the phones. Forensics revealed Jade had been linked to the flare numbers from the moment she was stopped. The phones showed direct text with users, arranging supply, confirming pickups, building a clear web of communication. Her role was obvious. Jonathan's device painted a different picture. Less chatter, more logistics, postcodes, drop times, quantities, planning. He wasn't doing the messaging. He was moving the weight. DNA from the phones sealed it. Both of them had touched the devices. Fingerprints, swabs, physical traces. There was no denying it. No claims of, not my phone or I borrowed it. The evidence tied them in too tight. When the analysis was finally shown in court, the Hughes line had long since gone quiet, but the messages had already been spoken, and they spoke volumes. Friday, 15th of September 2017, Preston Crown Court. The case of Rian Ferguson and Christopher Harrison was laid bare before the judge. The prosecution wasted no time. 3 kilos of high-purity cocaine, valued at £343,000, moved across county lines, quietly, efficiently, and without chaos. This wasn't messy street-level dealing. It was professional, precise, no arguments, no sob stories, no claims of pressure or fear. Both Ferguson and Harrison pleaded guilty. The judge, Her Honor Heather Lloyd, accepted the pleas but made one thing very clear. The quantity involved leaves no space for leniency. This was a high-level operation, and you both knew exactly what you were part of. Rian Ferguson, 25, of Charleston Drive, Helmshore, was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Christopher Harrison, 41, of Moss Lane, Oral Park, also received 7 years. The cocaine was seized in order to be destroyed. The hire car returned to the company. By the time they were led away, the Liverpool to Lancashire route had gone cold. Another line, another shutdown. Thursday, 4th January 2024. Chester Crown Court. Jade and Jonathan Hughes now stood before the dock. Faces familiar to police, but this time with nowhere left to run. Over 3 months, officers had watched every move, tracked every flare message, every burner SIM, every coded sale. The prosecution laid it all out. The phones, the scales, the packaging, the text trails. It was systematic. It was deliberate. Neither Jade nor Jonathan gave evidence in court. No excuses. No one else to blame. They accepted the charges early. The judge described their roles as part of a sustained supply line, each playing their part in the delivery of heroin and crack cocaine to vulnerable users. Jade Hughes, 33, of Gate Court, Ellesmere Port, was sentenced to 4 years and 8 months in prison. Jonathan Hughes, 32, of Pooltown Road, Ellesmere Port, received 2 years and 8 months. By the time the doors closed behind them, another Graft phone had fallen silent. 4 names, 2 cases, 1 outcome. In a trade that thrives on chaos and secrecy, these defendants operated with calm, almost corporate precision. But the evidence caught up with them, and when it did, the weight of what they carried was too heavy to ignore.